Hi, I'm Joe Pena, and this is Enlighten Me. Discussions with people on a mission, perhaps like you, who have a commitment to their purpose and the courage to see it through. My guest today is Beverly Rickard. Beverly, as you may know, is someone who has recently opened to her gifts through a series of interviews that she did with Suzanne Spooner. Actually, they weren't interviews, they were client sessions. And through these hypnosis sessions, she unfolded a wealth of information, some of it somewhat mind-blowing in terms of what the source of it was. Anyway, there's much more to that, and we're here to learn a little bit more of the backstory as it pertains to Beverly. This by way of introducing you to her. Welcome, Beverly.
Hi, Joe. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today.
Fill us in on where your earliest memories related to the gifts that you have and what your life was like from then up until the point where I think a very key part in most people's lives until the point of puberty. And we can take it as a second and then from there forward.
Okay. Yeah. So I was a baby in a crib, and that was my first encounter that I can remember. So I was laying in my crib, and to this day, I still remember what my crib looks like. And I was looking up, laying on my back as a baby, and I had seen spirits above me, floating above my crib. And that was the first encounter, I would say. And as the years unfolded, that encounter made sense as I grew older and I got to know my parents better as well. So that all unfolded later in life. But it does have importance because that is the very first encounter that I remember. And it's been like that ever since, like walking around in a world, seeing things, knowing things, experiencing things, having fears, not knowing what's behind that corner that I'm feeling, should I keep walking down this alley, even though I feel threatened and I'm in fear? A lot of the time it was hard to tell, was my fear real or was it coming from a spiritual sense? Was there a spirit following me or was there an actual human following me? Or was my intuition telling me that something was going to happen? In the area that I grew up in, we did have kidnappings and drive-by shootings, and it was the 90s. So there was like a lot of that, the gang-related issues were there. And so there was fear anyway in the collective and walking home from school and things like that. But there was always this sense of, is it a spirit that I'm feeling? And then a memory would come in about someone I didn't know. And I would get kind of a piece of their life story while I'm walking home. And I'm like, well, what was that all about? I don't know them. And then I was like, oh, that's weird. Now that feeling passed. And then I would keep walking and there would be some man maybe in his yard sitting there. And I was like, oh, I wonder if the woman I saw in that vision I just had to do with this man. But I didn't know as a child. And a lot of this stuff was very scary. And you don't have people to really talk to about these things to help you figure out, what's really going on. What are you feeling? What is the difference in all of it? And then, of course, there was my dreams. Every night was a nightmare. I have to disclose that to everybody because when I would lay down at night, I instructed everybody in my family to not turn the lights off in my room and to not close the door, because that's when really wonky stuff would be going on. And I was like, this just can't happen. The door has to stay open. Lights have to be on, because those two elements, that was just like, okay, that's haywire. You're asking for it, And so there was a few times when I would wake up and the lights would be out and the door would be closed and I would have a complete symbolic nightmare. Just treacherous. I'd wake up, my heart's pounding out of my chest, and I would look over in my room and I can move, just, to clarify, some people have asked me, well, can you move during these moments? Yes, I could move. I was frightened out of my mind though. So I didn't want to move because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. So it was just kind of like, just lay here and keep watching, but try to pretend like you're asleep still. So the spirit that's in this room with you doesn't know. And maybe it'll just go away. A lot of the times, one time in particular, I had a ghost literally float, and that sounds crazy, but out of my closet, directly maybe an inch away from my face. And this was one of those moments. And I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, just lay here still. Just lay here still, don't move. It might not know you're awake. And it came so close to my face and my heart was just pounding out of my chest. And then it turned around and went back into the closet. And I was just like, God, I was like praying heavily, get me out of this bed, get me out of this bed, get me, And finally, my body would just jump up out of the bed, rip the door open, and run out of that room, turn all the lights on in the house, and I would fall asleep on the couch. And I'd wake up in the morning, all the lights would be on. My mom would be getting up. Oh, you're on the couch. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I didn't tell her, Some things I told, but some things I didn't. It was really hard to gauge everybody in my life, my friends, my family, anybody I wanted to have a conversation with. I really had to use extreme caution and judgment for what I was about to share. So I had to really feel things out continuously. The dream state thing, I would literally start dreaming before I was even asleep. So I would lay down and I would close my eyes and start dreaming, even though I could still hear everybody in the other room. I could still feel my body, everything. I was still there, awake, but I was dreaming.
Beverly, what you're describing sounds to me like you were having what people commonly refer to as like a multidimensional experience. In other words, this dream that you were experiencing while you were still conscious and still hearing family was occurring in in some other time space, or for that matter, right here, right now for you. How is it that you were experiencing it? Visually, auditorially, sensorially,
Both.
in terms of feeling, etc.?
Yeah, both. Definitely both. I never made sense of that. Like growing, I thought everybody was like that. Like you just lay down and you start dreaming, even though you can hear everyone. When I knew it would get bad, though, Joe, because there was a distinct difference when the beginning of that would start, that I would know when something was going to go like dark, and it would usually be, I would be taken to this, it's kind of like a tunnel in a sense without any form to it, but you could tell it was a tunnel, and it was, it was dark. And there would be these like see-through greenish kind of numbers and letters like coming towards me as I'm going down this tunnel, so to speak. And every time I started seeing this, I would try to force myself to wake up because I knew that it would be bad if I stayed asleep. Like even though I wasn't fully asleep, I would be like, no, wake up. And I'd open my eyes and I'd lay there for 20 minutes. I go, okay, maybe it's gone. And I'd try again. And it always got me, though. So.
You spoke about very early on at the beginning, and then you skipped forward to being, I imagine, a young child. So you had experiences while you were in your crib. These experiences were of seeing beings, yes?
Yes.
And the beings that you saw, would you characterize them as benevolent or malevolent?
Both.
I see. And were there any that you ever felt that were there protecting you, as opposed to just being kind to you and making you feel well? Were there any that you ever felt like were there to protect you?
I hadn't had that feeling until way later in life.
I see.
So yeah, as a child, I was, I didn't know, and nothing felt, good or safe or protected. Even the good experiences left me feeling, I don't know. How do you interpret it if you don't know it's good?
Okay. The daytime experiences that you would have while you were walking down the street, you would see, for example, you said you would see a man, for example, and you saw a woman that was standing, that you saw in your mind's eye prior to that, and you thought you made an association between the two of them. So that was a conscious effort on your part. Did she have something to do with him? You didn't see her with him, did you?
No.
Gotcha. But somehow intuitively you felt that she may have had some association to him, yes?
Yes.
And was that the beginning of something that I'm going to skip to current day, that you now are more experienced at making the connection with?
Yes, now I am.
I see.
Back then I was in a somewhat of denial.
I imagine
and
trouble
still
processing
fear.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and still fear. A lot of fear.
When you had these energies, entities, beings approach you, did they ever speak to you? Did you ever hear them?
Yes.
And when they did, were they making appeals to you for help? Were they saying mean things to you? Were they saying friendly and kind things to you?
I had one in particular that presented himself in full color like a human being that I didn't realize until later in life he wasn't real. Had asked me to go downstairs and tell his mom that he needed a glass of milk. And I was such a little girl at the time that I didn't know that I didn't understand death. And I didn't understand that he had left this earth. So, I mean, I saw him as like you were talking. I saw him like that. And he was like, "Oh, hi. Can you do me a favor?" And I'm like, "Sure." And he's like, "Go downstairs and ask my mom for a glass of milk." And here I am, this bebopping little girl, maybe 4 years old, go down the stairs, and I walk right up to his mom, and my mother was in the room with her. And I said, "Oh, your son," and I said his name, but I won't disclose names here. I said, "Your son, he asked me to get a glass of milk for him. Can you get a glass of milk? I'm 4. I can't get him a glass of milk." If I had the option back then, being that age, to get the glass of milk for him, I probably would have, I think. Just so I wouldn't have to tell anyone that I was talking to him.
I see. Okay. And what was her response, though?
Oh, they looked at me really weird. And that's when I knew, emotionally, the air in the room was like, whoa. And I was just like, what just happened? Did I say something wrong? I'm probably about 4 years old. And these adults are just freaked out. And she's like, "Okay, honey," gives me a glass of milk. I brought it back upstairs. I watched him drink it in front of my face.
Wow. Okay. So I can understand why, this all happened physically, and yet you felt there was something strange about it when you went downstairs. At what point did you make a determination? Well, you said you didn't really know until many years later. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. So if I'm interpreting this correctly, somebody materialized in front of you.
Yes.
Took physical form. Your mother and
full color.
Okay. Your mother and this woman were shocked that you asked about milk for him. You could tell there was something really wrong with them. The mood shifted. You brought it up. You gave it to him. He drank. All physical.
Yeah. And I went back downstairs with the empty glass, and I'm like, "Well, here you go. You drink it." And they looked at me like I was nuts,
Oh, okay.
They're like, "You drink it, probably, but we're not going to have this discussion."
Right.
I didn't really like milk, so.
Well, Now, okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to this year because I really want to get closure on this part of the story. How was it that you finally made the connection between him being truly not there, even though you saw him physically?
I think it was when I started to understand death. That is not until a little bit later in life, that death became a real thing. And when you die, you leave and you're gone from here. And, you don't get to talk to that person, or you don't get to pet that animal, and you don't, that's when it finally, it was like a flooding of all of that memory came straight to the front of my brain. And I was like, oh my God. Whoa.
Beverly, did you ever get confirmation that this little boy wasn't alive?
I went to his funeral.
Oh, I see.
But I was so little.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember the day we were going to his funeral.
Okay.
And I was walking with my mother and my other siblings, and it was a sunny day. And I remember seeing ants, on the cement that we're walking on. And I was like, Mom, don't step on the ants. They'll die, but I didn't actually understand it because they were trying to explain to me we're going to this funeral. And I was like, well, what's a funeral? When someone dies. So all the way there, I was like singing The Ants Go Marching and warning all of my siblings not to step on any ants. And I remember walking up to his casket and seeing him laying there. And I looked up at my mom, and everyone's crying. And I looked at her and I whispered and I said, Mom, I can't cry. And she was like, it's okay, honey. And then it was like his mother moved, and then they moved, and we had things happen in our life. And when she moved into this new house, my mom brought us over there to go visit. And I still don't think I fully understood that I was never going to see this person again. I was, it wasn't fully understood. And I was like, oh, can I go check out the house? I love to go exploring, And so they were like, yeah, sure. So I ended up in the attic. I was in the attic, and that's where he was. And the weirdest part of the whole experience was that he showed up in full color, like you and I talking today, like in a very physical form. And a lot of the times when I will see spirits, like in, broad daylight, they almost have a solid color in a sense. They might have shadowing to kind of give me more of a shape. And then in my mind's eye, I can get even more. But this was like straight out in front of my eyes. This person was alive and I was talking to them.
Is there any way for you to tell whatever became of him? Because it sounds to me like he was still, how do people put it, connected to the earth plane and hadn't moved on.
He died unexpectedly.
Right. And yet what became of him after his visit with you? I guess that's what I was wondering about.
You mean in the after death when I had seen him?
Yeah.
Or
after that?
I think he was allowed to cross over.
I see.
That's what I got the sense of. I think his mother needed that. Just that little moment of letting her know that he was still there with her in when she moved houses. See, because she was in the first house where he was living with her. I think he was 18. He's an 18-year-old man, and he died of a heart problem that was very rare. And so I think maybe she was carrying guilt of moving house, that, oh my gosh, what if he comes to visit and I don't live there anymore? Or, So I think that was a lot of confirmation for his mother.
Sure, I bet.
So,
and I didn't get the impression that this person was that age. Somehow I got the impression they were a boy, a young boy, like you were a young girl.
Yeah, no.
So he must have towered over you. Was he standing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
But I had known him in life.
I see.
So I wasn't afraid of him.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. Very cool. Okay. So Beverly, we talked about you. Okay. We talked about you in your very early years, you having been in a crib, being visited by people, by beings, by entities that were both malevolent and benevolent. I asked about whether or not you felt protection from any of them. You told us a story about this particular incident here and how you had closure with it later in life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I asked you to take us through to the point of, for example, like till puberty, because I know that physiologically we go through many changes and we enter another phase in our life. I was wondering if you had experienced anything specific to that phase in your life and how that might have either amped up or shut down parts of these, we'll call them gifts that you have.
I would say yes. So at the age of 13, I was really feeling like I didn't fit in with my family at all. And of course, teenage rebellious years. I went through some hard times with my family and I moved out of the house at the age of 13 and with some other people. And they practiced, I believe it's Wiccan, which was very interesting for me. And through that, living with these people who were more spiritually connected in different ways really opened me up in a different sense. My mom's Christian, my dad's Catholic. And so they kind of butt heads a little bit, but at least they had the same, similarities. So when I get thrown in with this new group of people, I started to understand they have all these gods and these goddesses and all this stuff, which in a personal sense, and I don't mean any judgment towards them or anybody else, but me personally as a 13-year-old girl with my religious upbringing, I felt, well, I don't know how I feel about praying to gods and goddesses. And so I always went back to God, always. I learned how to do spiritual ceremonies with them, which I found was actually very fun and very sacred. And there you could feel energy. It was beautiful, that part of my growth. But in secret, instead of praying to, their god or goddess, I'm over here going, I love you, God, just come and join us, and I would always just like bring God into it. And it was just, for me, it was so powerful. So, and I don't mean that to knock anybody in their religious aspect. That was just my upbringing, my self-conditioning that was coming through in those moments. And so, yes, that definitely developed things in my teenage years at a different rate.
Okay, so as a teenager, you were with this group of people. They introduced you to different spiritual practices.
Yes.
The concept of being gods and goddesses, etc. You found a way to reconcile that for yourself by referring back to God, to one deity, if you will, or the creator, source, however people put it. And so you're a teenager, and are you finding that your gifts are being expressed in any way? And have they changed in how they expressed to you? Are you more comfortable? Are you more fearful? What?
About the same with the fear factor. And things definitely started taking off because I was starting to see more and more spirits. Obviously, when you're around that type of modality, I would call it, I think it does call in different spirits. And so with my gift that you would call it, at that time in my life, it wasn't a gift yet. So we'll get to that because I went through a lot of transitions and breakdowns trying to figure this all out. But at that point, I was still in fear And there was a lot more spirits developing and presenting themselves, waking me up in the middle of the night, showing up in dreams, lots more visions. I mean, the doors just really flew open. And I kind of went down a dark path for a good 6 months, I would say. That was around the Columbine shootings. So I had enrolled myself into a school that was up the street from the Columbine shootings. And on that day, and I'll tell you this because it's kind of interesting, I had family therapy that day of the Columbine shootings. And my mom had come to pick me up to go to therapy because we weren't living in the same house or even in the same town. I had moved out. I threw my stuff in trash bags and I moved in with this family. You know, we had a major breakdown. But I don't see it as bad anymore. I really think it's all part of what was supposed to happen. So yeah, if everyone wants to know, my school went on lockdown. There was chains around the doors. They turned all the lights off. We had to hide under our desks, and we weren't allowed to move until they had a phone call in the office from your parent. Your parent had to walk up the stairs to come and get you, and they would unchain these huge chains around the door, and you'd slide through, and then you'd go into the car with your parent and leave. So that's how that day went. And then we went to family therapy. And of course, that was the topic of discussion in family therapy that day.
You weren't in that particular school that had that event occur, correct? Okay. You were in the same town?
Yes.
Okay. And so how did this experience affect you in any way as it pertained to what I'm referring to as your gifts?
It really, I look at it and I always remember that day. Every day on the calendar when it comes up, I remember it. And I had to feel the fear of the entire school and all of the kids that day, and probably outside of that into other schools. And I didn't know why at the time when I was hiding under my desk that I felt like I needed to push a light outside of me and just blanket the entire situation with this. But I do remember feeling that. And I also now, we were learning about World War II at that time in a public school. It's my first public school experience. And during World War II, that I ended up remembering that was Hitler's birthday. And so I kind of tied the energies of that with, did these boys know, or was it coincidental? Which has led me to really want to dig deeper into the energies of that exact moment and try to maybe figure it out a little bit more. But there was a lot going on during that time. And if you remember, I think we had some kind of a comment as well where a lot of people had committed suicide around those times as well. There was a lot of weird things going on. So I've always wanted to kind of go back and kind of check that out a little bit.
Okay. What struck me as interesting was that you felt, was it an intuitive nudge to send light out? Or was it the result of having known by this time? In other words, what was it that motivated you to do that kind of thing in particular? Was it these practices, for example, with the family who practiced Wiccan? Or was it something that came within you to just intuitively feel like that was the right thing to do?
It was more intuitive. I don't even know how to explain it. And the ceremonies that I was doing with the family, it really didn't feel anything like that. I mean, there would be energy in a circular form, but it wasn't like this. This was like a huge giant ball of light, 360 degrees, just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, enveloping as much as it could. And I just kept focusing on it and focusing on it and focusing on it. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember just like, I could almost feel it vibrating even right now while we're talking about it. And then eventually I just opened my eyes and they were like, "Oh, your mom's here to get you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." and you're like, oh, well, like, see ya, everybody. It was just, I wouldn't say that the Wiccan ceremonies really helped me understand whatever that was. The Wiccan ceremonies to me were more about like, you stand there and this is the energy you hold for the circle, but you're not the whole circle and you're not an entire energy and you're not pushing it out like that. It was just like, you show up and you're representing Earth today, and so I would try to be like, okay, Earth energy, this was like so much bigger. I mean, this was like white light, huge sphere, just expansive vibrational energy. It was bizarre.
Okay, so the white light wasn't huge fear. It was what you were doing to counter that, correct?
Right.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you could feel it vibrate, almost like it had a vibrational feeling to it. Was there also any sound that was associated with it? Do you recall?
It would just be, I don't know how to explain that, but with the vibration, almost like a humming, but it was so deep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If that makes any kind of sense. Kind of like bass, but not in the sense like, we're hearing a huge bass drop. It was just like this vibrational bass. I don't know how to explain it.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. Do you recall how far you expanded it out? Was it strictly the town? Did you go further? I don't remember if you said so.
I would say at least 2 to 3 towns.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what happened that day. Mm-hmm. And I didn't talk about, actually, it's the first time I'm talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You asked.
Right. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of firsts for you, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, were you still 13 at this time? Was this soon after, right? I mean, you were going through the counseling. I could understand how that would be something you would go through probably for the full first year after our separation. Mm-hmm. How long was this separation from your family?
Almost a year.
Okay.
I came back in that summer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had enrolled myself in this other school and did everything on my own and put my stuff in trash bags and left. So.
Right. And the other school you said was a public school, yeah?
Yeah, the one I attended was public, but before that, it was a charter school.
I see. Mm-hmm. Did you feel, just out of curiosity from an educational perspective, was that charter school doing a better and more comprehensive job of educating you? Or do you feel that you got a better form of education in the public school? I
found in public school to be very bored. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize the education I was getting in the charter school. They went at least 2 to 4 years ahead of public schools. By the time I went to, after that summer of moving back home, I went and I begged my mom, can I go to the public school, high school? And she says, yeah. So I went to the public high school and I was sitting in classes, literally watching the clock tick. I was just like, I learned this in 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And I'm in freshman in high school. I was so bored. I ended up, disenrolling myself from public school and talked my mom into, let me homeschool myself. I already have done this. Mm-hmm. And she went with it, paid for all my homeschool courses, and I homeschooled myself and graduated 2 years early.
Got it. Okay. So how did that experience affect the trajectory of your life from the standpoint of how you navigated with these gifts that you had?
Oh, wow. The gifts never went away. Mm-hmm. It's, life being a teenager and trying to experience love and understanding what life was about and, growing into a young adult, but still having all this on your back. Mm-hmm. It got pretty confusing really fast, especially when I tried dating. how do you get close to someone you're dating when you can't actually be yourself and disclose the truth of what you see and what you feel? I mean, you'd be having a conversation with a person and this other stuff could be going on, and I learned how to multitask in my brain, and now like I'm not as good as it anymore since I've come out of the spiritual closet, so to speak. Sometimes they just take me away and show me something, bring me back, and I'm like, wait, what are we talking about? So yeah, it was like that.
Okay. Now you just said something along the lines of they take you and then bring you back. Who's they? Where do they take you?
Oh.
And where do they bring you back from?
So I'm right here with you, but in a sense, because time is only linear in this dimension, and they have shown me that. And I've had experiences that they have shown me that. And there is all kinds of timelines existing, all at the same time within this dimension. But what they do is they spiritually pull me aside. They give me a message and put me back in without anyone knowing that, you know, I really have gone anywhere. But mentally, as a physical being, vibrationally in this dimension, it's hard for me to like jump from there to here. And they being, I'm not exactly sure yet, but I know it's like spirit guides. It could be, I think it's definitely probably spirit guides of high vibration. Always, because that's all I talk to and pray to. And it's always beneficial and high vibration and for the best. Anything else needs to leave, that type of stuff. So I'm guessing, it's a huge guess, because I haven't actually wanted to really know. And I'll be honest with you, because do I really want the truth? Because the truth has come to me a lot this last year without me really asking for it. So if I ask for it, you can't unask for it. So I feel that when I'm ready to know more and more and more, they will kind of inch me into it, you know, because I got pushed over the cliff here.
Right. And in different stages of your life, in different ways on top of that, evidently.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we talked about your teen years, and I know there's a whole lot of experiences you're going to have as a teen. And there's the idea of wanting to fit in, be liked, be in a relationship, have friends, have fun, just do teen stuff. And you could say regular kids have a challenge doing that themselves anyway. It's just part of the teen experience. You had this compound that for you. Did you have experiences of feeling of loneliness, for example, of not being able to, well, where were you able to truly be yourself if you weren't when you were with friends or boyfriends or like that?
I think I used music as an escape, and gymnastics. When I was in the gym, gymnastics is a very solo. It's not a team thing. I don't have to feel other people's energy. I don't have, you know, teenage energy it's so erratic, off the charts. I mean, one minute they're like Twitter pated and happy, and then in the next minute they could be completely angry. And so being around that continuously, I felt like a live wire that was just like getting burned a lot. And so when I hit the gym, and I would go early, so none of the other team members would show up, and I would stretch on my own, and the coaches would be there setting up or doing whatever, but I would do a lot of things on my own and train on my own. And because I just felt comfortable, and I was feeling in my body and I was feeling in my mind. There was a lot of self-integration with it. And then music brought so much to my heart and my soul. I would close my bedroom door and I would teach myself different songs and just feel the vibration of the vocals and every piece and part of the music. And I mean, I could play a song over and over for 4 hours straight, learning it inside and out and just feeling all of the different pieces. So I'd say those were how I got through teenage years. not knowing, not understanding, not really having anybody to turn to. Of course, with the Wiccan people, I could be a little bit more myself, but not fully. When I told them that I had seen a spirit in their basement, the very next day they were cleaning the whole basement and saging. And I was like, what's going on? What did I do? Oh my gosh, I hope I didn't make anybody upset. And they were like, no, this is how you get rid of spirits. So that was my first learning and understanding of that part of the spirit world.
Gotcha. Now, when you had that experience with them, was that in that year that you spent with them, or did you maintain a relationship with them after that?
I did not maintain a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Was that part of the arrangement for you returning home? Probably don't need to know that, but I just asked anyway.
Oh, no, my mom would never really say or do that. I think it was just out of respect. And I had had a lot of experiences in that house that I wouldn't have had in my house. And I think I just needed a break.
Okay, cool. All right. So there you are. You're a little older as a teenager. Let's say you're pushing young adulthood now. What happens then? What happens in your age from, like, say, 18 to the point where, I don't know, the point where you truly feel like you're an adult, perhaps being on your own?
Wow. A lot. I did attract negativity into my life, but it's probably myself doing that. So I'm not going to put blame anywhere for that. And I knew that it was negative. I knew my visions got stronger. My hunches got very intense. If I was told to go look in a bottom drawer under a specific thing, there would be something there. I would get shown things every night in my dream state. It really, 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 really intensified as an adult. And it got more confusing. The gifts have always progressed. Once I get used to one thing, it's like, oh, okay, I'm okay with this. And then they would throw in the next thing and I'm like, what the heck? I just got used to the last thing. What's this? And that still is today, that's still happening. So yeah, astral projection really started. I started in my dream state traveling into other people's existences and lives, and I was shown things that was going on. I remember one dream in particular. I was taken into this person's life where they were going to receive some kind of a medical treatment. And I was brought into the room right before the medical treatment, and I could explain the whole thing. But I was looking out my eyes, so I couldn't see my body, but I knew it wasn't me because it didn't feel like me. And I knew that this doctor's name was at the time. I should write things down and what happened to this person and how they escaped and why they escaped and why they felt so nervous and cautious. And I woke up, of course, my heart's pounding because I just escaped this treacherous medical procedure in the dream state. And I started looking it up. I looked up the doctor's name. I looked up the procedure and started figuring out that this was real and that this doctor, they took his license away for what he was doing. All of these things had happened. And so things started to really become real. I was starting to witness different treacherous things. It could be murders. It could be, like I said, medical procedures that go completely wrong. That would be traumatic to somebody. I was taken all over the place and shown different things. And I was even shown different places in a time lapse. They would show me a building and I would see kids running around, what the building looked like, what it was. And then it would fast forward to the next part of that building's stage of life, all the way to the third, and then why it was important for them to show me. And it's like oh my goodness, what do you do with this? And it's like, you don't just call somebody up and we have to do something, because how do you know what to do?
Yeah. And in addition to that, did you ever question, were these experiences actually taking place? Was that intuitively obvious to you, or did you ever feel like you were just dreaming and having these experiences and they weren't real?
At first, I thought they weren't real.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, these are just dreams. Until the moment when I went on vacation to a place I'd never been. And in one of the dreams, I distinctively remember driving straight up this bridge, and I had never been on a bridge like this before. And so it really stuck out to me, this part of the dream. And I still remember everything that was a part of that. And we happened to go on vacation about a month later, and we're driving there. We're going to road trip. I mean, it's fun, let's get the road, let's go. And we're on this road trip, and all of a sudden, we're driving straight up this bridge. Now, mind you, before we even got to that bridge, we had gotten stuck in a loop in a town before that 3 times. And we were like, I swear we were supposed to turn left here, trying to get out of this town and back onto the interstate or what have you. There was some kind of road construction. We ended up looping this town 3 times. I was like, I don't know, something just doesn't feel right. It feels very familiar, even though I know we've never been here, but something doesn't feel right. And we kept driving. We get back on the interstate, and then, I kid you not, like all of a sudden we're driving straight up this bridge that was in the dream. And it hit me right then and there. I was like, that was the town that happened in the dream. And when the person escaped in a car, they ended up driving up this bridge. And right then and there, I was just like, I was in shock. I was completely in shock because it was like I was living it, but it wasn't me. In the dream, it wasn't me, but in real life, it was me.
Ooh. Well, so there you are, having this real life experience related to a dream. Were you just going through having like a panic experience with that? How did you process it, and how did it come out in the end, where you finally were able to find a sense of relief from it?
I was shocked, completely shocked. I just remember I remember going, oh my gosh, and I was like sitting there, and I'm like, this happened. This is the bridge. That was the town. This, like doing that, and I have my girls in the back seat. We're on vacation, and I'm like, okay, calm down. Just calm down. What happened has already happened. You can't like call a police station and tell them that what happened and what the house looks like and what happened there, and there are these VHS tapes, and you can't tell them because you're gonna sound like a crazy person. So in this sense, you're just gonna have to take it for validation. And I had to just take that in, and I had to breathe it on out, and I had to get back to vacation with my family. And it still sticks in the back of my head.
Beverly, I think maybe I missed this part. What were the events that pertain to that home? Was there a crime committed? Were people hurt? What happened?
Yes.
And you don't have to be so specific if you don't want to. You can be general about it, but I must have missed that part.
Yes. No, I didn't disclose that. But yes, there were crimes being done. There was a man luring little children into his home with toys. He had both sides of his street, and not the whole street, but parts of it, with little children's toys, almost like a path leading him into his house to come play. And I had this gut-wrenching feeling in the dream, and I don't I don't really know if I was myself in the dream because I couldn't tell. And I did go down the path and I went in the house, and in the house had, and that's the other thing, through this dream is when I started to realize they communicate with me emotional vibrations with colors. Because in this dream, there was like a dingy coloring to everything inside of the house, almost making me feel, you know, how a movie is set up and they use certain colors or filters. It was like they started doing that so I could get a sense of the feeling. And there was a camera set up, and I thought, well, I'm going to play this camera and look at what's on it. And it was just horrifying. I stopped it immediately. And then I saw a bunch of other VHS tapes appear. And then I was like, where's this man at? Because I couldn't tell him, like, is he still here? Is he deceased? And I had a feeling he might be deceased, but I wasn't sure. So I went running back out the house, down the pathway. And this car pulls up I've never seen before with these people I've never seen before. And I jump in with them. They knew me. And so that's the sense that I feel like I wasn't actually me, that I was whoever that was that saw that and knew what was going on there. And they jumped in this car, and this car just took off. And my heart was wrenching while I'm in this car. And we're driving and driving. And all of a sudden, it's starting to turn into night. It tells me that we were on the road for a little while. And then all of a sudden, we're going straight up this bridge. And I had never been in the South before. So I'd never experienced those bridges that go like straight up for boats to go under them. So I had never, I mean, that just, it completely freaked me out. I was in fear anyway because I'm afraid of heights, and we just kept climbing. I mean, this bridge seemed to go forever in that dream, but it could have been my panic too. So yes, it was traumatizing.
So you didn't say specifically, but it sounds to me like this man was raping children and filming himself with them.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to underscore something that you spoke of this experience. What led into this was that you said that you were being led into people's lives. And you mentioned experiencing something through an individual's eyes as someone who was a patient and under the care of a doctor who didn't have their well-being in mind. And then you had this experience of looking through this experience with the toys and the children in the man's house through someone else's eyes. And so you're brought into these experiences for a reason. And I'm curious if you ever reconciled what that reason was.
I have no idea. Because I wanted to stay hidden for so long. I didn't want to like contact any authorities. I didn't want to really expose myself or talk to anybody about any of those experiences. And those are just two that come to mind during our discussion today that were very prevalent. And yes, now that we're talking about it, I was seeing those experiences through the eyes of the other person, like you had said. And the astral projection dreams that I was having, I was actually floating. This was actual physical body walking, experiencing. Astral projection was me floating along. And the colors were always more vibrant when there was astral projection involved to I'm guessing other dimensions at this point.
Okay. So there you are. You were talking about this last experience with young children. Let's fast forward to the next, let's call it stage of your life. By this time, had you accepted your gifts and learned how to utilize them? And if not, let's go to that part of your life where that had happened, and perhaps how much time maybe spanned between that.
So I started working in a shop doing hair on numerous different people all day long. And I started to recognize that I was getting information while I was working on people, but I wasn't acting on it. And it got to the point where the information was completely overtaking me and would start repeating and repeating and repeating, almost disturbing everything that I had to do in my physical self, forcing me to tell this person whatever. So when that first started doing that, I started having to package these things into pretty little boxes to where no one knew what I was doing. And I would really have to figure out in a almost magical way of how to give them pieces of information without them knowing that I know. And that was really interesting learning how to do when you're trying to not expose yourself. So it was more like a man going to a business meeting that day. And I'm getting messages about this business meeting, and I see all of the characters involved, all of the different energies, and then they would pinpoint one energy that was very pertinent to that meeting and what was going to take place and what the person in my chair was supposed to do and how they were supposed to react differently and express a different idea that they were not thinking yet. And so I would say, oh, how's your meeting going to go today? I would start a conversation. Then I'd let them tell me what they thought. I would say, oh, it sounds like you have someone in the meeting that, maybe sounds like they have this kind of characteristic traits. And they would say, yeah. And I said, well, have you ever thought about maybe asking them this question or feeling this way about that person because this might be happening to them in their personal life, or we just never know. So I had to package these information pieces in just perfect little boxes, it seemed like, until one day that changed.
I understand how you would want to not expose yourself. That's something entirely on its own. Having a concern about exposing yourself. Clearly you didn't feel safety, or perhaps just not okay with yourself being known as that. You let us know that something changed. All right, but before we talk about that, I really want to address this part where you didn't feel okay with yourself, and maybe they're tied together. I don't know. Help bring us there now.
Why I didn't feel safe expressing the trueness of it.
Mm-hmm. And how that affected this thing that suddenly changed in you. Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Okay. I worked with people that were devout Catholics. And I had maybe said a few things after working there for so many years that maybe, caught them on the radar. And these people did silly things like, oh, we're going to sprinkle holy water, and, little remarks they would make. It actually got to the point, and this is kind of funny. My boss would come up to me in the back, where no one else was. And she'd be like, oh, just so you know, Father's coming in today. And at first I was just kind of like, why is she telling me that? And then I got to thinking about it later, and I was like, oh, she was maybe afraid I was going to be more of myself. So there's fear.
So that said, you mentioned that then everything changed. I'm curious to know. Yeah, let's talk about that. What changed and how did that happen?
Well, they bluntly, whoever they are, the guides or spirits, whoever they are that have taken me on this glorious journey, they started allowing the dead to come in and talk to me. And distinctively, this happened specifically on one day I can remember. And it was a full-on experience. I mean, I've had little small ones where I think maybe they were testing it out, but this was a full on, like, I guess they call it mediumship or whatever, I guess, experience. And my client that was coming in happened to be coming in when nobody else was going to be in the shop. Oh, go imagine. So she comes in and I lock the door because it's just going to be her and I the rest of the day. And I love her. I mean, she's a great person. She sits down and all of a sudden I am like blindsided with butterflies and just these warm feelings. And I mean, I am just, and then boom, this flood of messages comes, flying through my head. Do, say this, say this, say this. And butterflies everywhere and butterflies. And I mean, this is just like going crazy off the charts. And she's sitting in my chair and she's talking to me. And I'm just like, I cannot hear a word she is saying. I do not know what is going on right now. And I'm just like, okay, it's okay. Calm down. Just breathe through this. It'll go away. Wasn't going away. Nope, wasn't going to go away. Finally, I just looked at her and I said, all right, this is going to sound really weird. And let me know if you're okay with it. But I'm going to maybe say some things, and I don't mean to hurt you or anything like that, because I actually have no idea what I'm saying. And I don't know what things mean. But are you open for me to give you some messages? And she just turned the chair, the swivel chair, towards me. She looked at me and she goes, yeah. And I go, really? And she's like, yeah. And I said, oh, thank God. I said, okay. Why am I seeing butterflies everywhere? And what about this? And what about that? And she just looked at me and she had tears in her eyes. And there was more messages that came through, obviously, before that moment. But she had said, no one knows this, but this is the day, that it was either, because there was two times that it had happened. And I might mix the two up because they were both spectacular. But on this particular day, she said, today was the day that my mom had died. And I said, well, I think your mom's here. And then she showed me a tattoo and explained to me what everything was that I was seeing. And then mom came through and was like, oh, this is my time. Tell her this, tell her that, tell her this. And I was like, okay. So I started telling her. And she's crying and I'm feeling bad. This is my first experience. So I'm like, I don't mean to make her cry. I'm just like, oh my goodness, I'm making someone cry. That's not what I'm trying to do here. And then I realized it was tears of like healing and of love. And then I was okay. Because that was my first time understanding it, how it unfolded. I haven't lost anybody close to me except one person, and it was a client that I was close to. So no family. So I've never experienced anything like those emotions ever. So it was very confusing, but they gave me a huge upgrade that day. I can tell you that.
I'm just curious, how long had you spent with her while this was happening? Was it a matter of an hour, 2, 3 hours?
I guess it's called channeling is what I've been told. But when the channeling starts, it's like time is non-existent. I think we were in there, it could have been 4 hours. And I had maybe a 2.5 hour appointment blocked out for her, but she was the last one of the day. I didn't have anybody after. Nobody was coming or going. I had locked us in the shop. So no one could walk in and ask for anything. And I don't even know why I did that. Sometimes I just did that, but it was perfect. But yeah, channeling seems to, time just flies here in this dimension.
So you mentioned that you finally realized that the tears were tears of healing, and I imagine it altered your perception in terms of how you were delivering it, how you felt about what you were delivering, making you feel so much better about bringing this perhaps closure to an individual. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
You
So
know, Joe, before
yes.
we move on, a lot of people say that they get drained when they do energy work like that. I was so electrified and filled with joy and so fulfilled and happy just helping her. I didn't feel drained at all. I had to say that.
I know there's something to that. I'm not going to create a story around it.
Okay.
That's a beautiful thing. Okay. So we're almost done with this journey that we started a little over an hour ago, and I won't keep you much longer. All right. So perhaps we can wrap it up by having you take us on a path from that point, the very first time where you finally opened up to it, by virtue of everything lining up: privacy, safety, security, comfort, someone you appreciated and enjoyed, and who I'm sure appreciated you, and bringing these messages through. And now here we are today, and in the near recent past, you had done these channelings with Suzanne. What happened between that very first occasion and the time when you and Suzanne finally sat down for your session together?
Wow. So before the first session, is that what you want to know? I had traumatic period happen in my personal life. Actually, a lot of traumatic moments. So I knew that I wasn't serving my purpose. I can full on tell people that I knew I wasn't. And it got harder and harder on me physically and mentally, emotionally, spiritually to continue working in the shop, you know, as a cosmetologist on the people I loved. I mean, I loved and cherished everybody so much, and that's what made it hard. And I fell to my knees and cried one day, you know, and I talked to God a lot all day long, but this was like a plea for, I know that I'm not doing what you want me to do. And I don't quite understand what it is you want me to do, but I know that it isn't this. And I don't know how to stop because I love these people and I like to make them happy. I like to fulfill their lives. I love our conversations, but I know that there's more that I'm supposed to be doing because the intensity that you're bringing down on me like a hammer, I know this is not me fulfilling what you put me here to do. And I cried and cried and cried. And I said, I give it all to you. And you're going to have to do something because I don't have the strength to do it. And shortly after that, I was with my partner and middle of the day, and we're just going into a hardware store to get a ladder. And I go to get out of the truck, and two huge angels appeared, and everything went into slow motion. And they said, you're going to fall now. And I fell. I mean, flat on the cement in the parking lot on my back, fell. And I couldn't get up. And my partner comes running around the truck. Are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm totally lying. I'm not fine, but I'm lying. You know, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I just need help up. So he gets me up and I completely black out and I have huge ringing in my ears. I can't hear anything. And I said, and I looked at him and I'm pretending the whole time. And I said, just put me in the truck for a minute and give me a second and everything will be fine. And he puts me in the truck and I sit there and I just breathe and I close my eyes and I wait for the ringing to come down in my ears. I mean, it was the highest pitch I've ever heard in my life. And I came to, like I could start seeing again. And then the high pitch went down. And I turned over, I looked at my partner, I said, okay, let's go in and get your ladder. And I try to get out of the truck. I'm like, oh, I might need your help. So he helps me get out of the truck. I'm faking the whole thing. I'm in complete denial because I have to work the next day. So I'm like, well, we're going to go in this store. So we go in the store and I'm faking the whole thing. And I mean, I'm sweating bullets. I'm in so much pain and I'm lying to him. And he's just looking at me and he's like, you know, we don't have to get this ladder. I think we should just, let's leave. And I said, oh no. And he goes, what? I started having an ocular migraine that I used to have a long time ago. So I started seeing the flashy aura. And within 30 seconds of that, I usually have to take these 2 Advil migraines and it stops it within 30 minutes to an hour. And then I'm just kind of tired the rest of the day, but at least it stops it. Those part of the headaches, but these other ones that I get, no. So I was lucky that it was the aura ones. And he goes, okay, well, do you have, I said, I haven't had these in so many years. I don't have the medicine with me. He's like, okay, we're leaving. I'm going into Walmart. You're staying in the truck. I'm going to go get them. So we drive right over to Walmart. He goes in, leaves me in the truck, and I am just sweating like from pain, you know, like when your body is just like in so much pain. And I'm sitting sideways because I can't even sit flat. And he gets me the pills, and the whole way home I argued with him. He's like, you're going to the doctor. I'm like, no, I'm not. I have to go to work tomorrow. He's like, something's wrong with you. And I'm like, nothing's wrong. I said, I'm probably just bruised. I fell. People fall. I'm bruised. I'm going to work tomorrow. He's like, no, you're not. And he gets on the phone in front of me, calls the doctor's office and makes an appointment. I was so furious and I'm just sitting there in so much pain. And it wasn't until like 5 minutes before we get home, this is an hour and a half drive, that I'm like, yeah, I probably do need to go to the doctor tomorrow. And then I couldn't even get into bed, all of that. We find out I broke my lower back the next day and couldn't return to work. And it was like everything changed in my life in that split second of a moment. And that was God. That was God doing what I could not do. He did not paralyze me. He didn't make it to where like I couldn't function. I mean, yeah, it wasn't the same, but I was stubborn. I needed this to not go back into work, to be able to stop, because I didn't have the strength to do it, to tell people no, I couldn't. And he knew that, but here I am, I'm broken. So now I can't. So everybody, all of my clients went away, my job went away, my family ended up moving out of our rental next door to where we live. And kind of, we had a moment where there was like, they kind of disowned me. So it was like my family left, my clients left. My daughter moved into a house with her boyfriend. And then my younger daughter was graduating high school and getting ready to leave for college. So it was all happening all at once. And I just had to sit in that. And I had to do a lot of healing. I had to do a lot of recollection. I had to really go inward. So and forgive me for saying this, but my COVID stuff happened probably a year to a year and a half before everyone else had to go inward. So it was interesting when COVID happened and the whole world was in this disarray of, oh, we have to go in, we can't go to work, we can't socialize, we can't be around family. And I thought to myself, I was like, wow, I just experienced that. I know what it feels like already. So then I was really good at the new people coming into my life, helping them navigate through those emotions and through those feelings. Even though they weren't quite the same, they had similarities. And so then I ended up in Suzanne's office by a friend who loves hypnosis. And that's how I ended up in her office. And I had no expectations, zero. I thought, well, I'll go. And if I get healing, awesome. But really, I mean, I do or I don't. It is what it is. And that's how I ended up there.
Okay. You mentioned that after you had your own personal isolation period, that people started coming into your life. What was it that brought those people into your life that enabled you to help them adapt to the changes that were going on by virtue of that global lockdown, if you will?
Healing. Each one was in a stage of healing, and I was in a stage of healing. And so energy attracts energy. And so maybe they didn't need the healing that I was going through, but maybe I had already been through what they're going through. And so I could help them understand. I always say knowledge is power. And if you can know something and understand it, then you can process it in the human brain so much easier than it just being thrown at you and not knowing what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, what's going on. I mean, that's when the tornado starts. But if you can have somebody come in and go, well, this is kind of what I gathered when I went through that, how I felt, and this is what I did, and this is how it worked for me. Maybe try a few of these things. And some of the stuff I would channel directly to a person that maybe they didn't give me to use, but was very specific to the individual.
Okay, one quick question before I start to wrap this up. We went from you first having that first encounter where you had that private session essentially with that client of yours in a locked shop at the time, to now you are having open discussions with people and sharing with them things that would be beneficial to them. What kind of a time frame was this happening in? Would you say?
I would say the last, time escapes me when I was in the shop, because the years just, I mean, I worked there probably 15 years and it flew. If I were to guess, probably the last 5 years of the career is when they really started pushing me more, pushing more and more on me.
Okay. So I know we talked about a number of experiences you had, and then having the shop experience, sharing that information with this lady as the kind of like the kickoff to moving into doing that with more people. What kinds of things are you expressing to people? How is it that you are bringing this information through? I think you mentioned at one point it was, you mentioned mediumship. How would you express these modalities that would best describe what you provide to others?
I provide whatever the person needs. And it's not just strictly mediumship, but if there is a loved one that shows up when I'm giving them a channeled message from their guides, their spirits, past life memories that they're holding on to, blockages of energy, it's whatever I'm guided to tell the person in the moment. And it pertains specifically to that moment, to that person. And it's very direct. And if a loved one comes in and needs to add, or that needs to be the focal point of that channeled message, then that's what comes through. But honestly, it isn't just one modality over another. It's whatever they want me to see. It's whatever they want me to feel. It's whatever they want me to smell sometimes. It's channeled messages from loved ones. It could be, I could have a dream the night before, and they could be talking to me, and all of a sudden the dream comes up, and they're like, remember in the dream this happened? You have to tell them this. And so it's honestly whatever comes up during whatever the person needs.
Tailor-made services, if you will.
Yes.
Tailor-made to the individual. Yeah. Okay. So, Beverly, we've come to the end of this discussion here, but I think perhaps there would be an interest in hearing more from you, from people who might like to join us. live. So you and I have had a discussion about this before we booked this show. And what I'm referring to is something that you and I, for now, are referring to as a webinar, and holding one at a time that I'll mention in just a minute. But this webinar would be for the purpose of having a group of people join us, doing it on Zoom, which is our preferred venue for the time being. We're not going to be doing it on a YouTube Live or anything like that, for now, at least. And so what I'd like to do is to announce that Beverly and I are going to be doing a webinar 1 week from today. It'll be on June 11th, and it will take place at 11 a.m. I know 11 a.m. on a Friday may seem like an odd time, and we may adjust that. And the whole reason for us to be adjusting is because there will be perhaps other webinars that we would discuss doing as well. Isn't that right, Beverly?
Yes. Yeah.
So Beverly, you're up for this then, huh?
Yes, I'm very excited.
Okay.
This gift is to be used to help people, to help light lights, to help us gain understanding, to help healing, the integration of the shifting of humanity. And if we have to do that one individual at a time, in some instances, others, it can be groups that need to hear certain messages, but sometimes it has to be individualized to get people to realize what's going on, to light their light, and to help them see their path again. So I'm very excited to do this.
Beverly Rickard, thank you for joining me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm Joe Pena. Thanks for visiting with us. Looking forward to seeing you when you join Beverly and I on this webinar that we're going to be doing together. All right.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
See
Bye,
you there. Bye.